Right. Hi, we welcome you to another episode of Learning Stories. This is a podcast where we interview a diverse set of learners from the 21st century. In each episode of this podcast, we interview a guest who has a story to share about how they acquired a set of skills and knowledge in a creative and innovative way. In the process, we hope to uncover a new understanding of learning as conceptualized, imagined, and narrated by the guest in our show. Today's guest, Thomas Koshy, is a dear friend of mine. We've known each other. We went to school together, and it's been 10 or 12 years since we last spoke. But I'm really excited about this chat and everything that he's achieved. I think is just the start for him. But a little bit about Thomas before we jump into this conversation. Um, Thomas is a mechatronics graduate from SRM. He's been smitten by the entrepreneurial bug right out of college. He experimented and dabbled with multiple businesses, but always found an opportunity in the salon and grooming industry. Learning every day, a quote that drives him at a personal level was from a movie called Circle starring Emma Watson. And when her character was asked, "What is the biggest fear in your life?" this is what she said. The answer was unfulfilled potential. Aiming to be better every day and reach what he feels his potential is his eventual target. So, Thomas, thank you for giving us your time. I know it's really busy with everything happening with Fleck, but to get started, any thoughts about this particular podcast and where you wanted to go, just to get started, Thomas?
Thank you so much for having me, Abhishek, and thank you for the wonderful intro. In terms of how the direction goes, I'll always follow your lead. But more about touching, I think around entrepreneurship, where I feel is my expertise, and what my learnings are is something that I would love to share. The ups and downs of how the journey of an entrepreneur is something that I would love to shed light upon.
Perfect, Thomas. And I think entrepreneurship is such a complex, but also a very simple idea. So to break that down, I want to go back to the past. Thomas, I know you grew up in the Middle East. So the question I wanted to start this podcast off with was, what was it like growing up in the Middle East, and what were some of the things that Thomas liked doing outside school?
Wow, but that's a very interesting question. So I think growing up in the Middle East, I think one thing that I've definitely learned is I think what you also must have obviously felt is, right? It was a very safe environment, right? I think it was a very comfortable environment. We were very privileged in that sense, right? Our parents took care of us. They've given us everything that we wanted. So it is a very, you can say, nice environment to be in. Everyone was quite friendly. And Bahrain is known for its hospitality, obviously. That's where we both grew up. And I think the people, everyone just, it is just, everything's just a stone's throw away compared to how much travel we have to do, especially in places like India. So compared to I think how we grew up, I think it was just a. I think we didn't have to know this, the discomfort of reality, right? We were masked by the privileges and the comfort and support that our parents gave us, especially not just our parents but our teachers, the surroundings, the neighborhood. I think it was just a lovely, lovely childhood that I had. I think all of us had for sure.
Like, what did you study, Thomas? Like, when you were at high school, I know in CBSE schools we go through science, commerce, and arts. So, what did you study, and why did you think that was the best path for you?
So for me, again, at that stage of life, right, I think ever since I was young, I was very ambitious. I always wanted to be something, I was very ambitious and I knew that, right? So I've dabbled across multiple ideas. And what I actually pursued in 11th grade in high school was engineering graphics. So I was a bit inclined towards maybe exploring architecture and all of that. But again, at that stage, you're exposed to a lot of the other subjects, and it's just one specialization where engineering graphics was a subject. But as all of us had in the science section, we were exposed to chemistry, physics, maths, and all the subjects that we had to kind of study and learn.
That's awesome, Thomas. I feel like entrepreneurship, I'm trying to understand the mind and the
Right.
acts of an entrepreneur. So, I'm trying to see where the seed first set in, this
Of
idea of
course,
entrepreneurship in your mind. So, just to,
of course.
open it up a little more, what was your first and earliest memory of going to a salon and getting a haircut? Like,
Oh wow, right, right. That's a great question. So I think That was definitely in a place Salmania. I remember the barber or stylist name as well. His name was Unni Uncle. That's how we used to call him. And I remember my dad taking me and my brother when I was probably in second grade or third grade. And the first experience was it was a crowded barber shop, and Unni Uncle used to say hi, how are you, good morning, and all of that in our vernacular languages. And he used to place, and I was extremely short, and probably I am still now, but we used to put he used to put that additional what's that slab so that my height is kind of raised, and then he used to be like, how is your day, how is it going, and he used to comfort me and just talk to me, and then my dad was sitting in the back and just catching up on news. And if you think about it, right, the barbershop was a place where people used to bond, if you think about it, right, before even the phones or anything came into existence, right. Barbershops are locations where people used to catch up on political news, what's happening in the economy or what's happening in the neighborhood. It was a place where people used to come and if you think about it, talk about things, right? Reflect ideas about each other. And if you even look at history or even Western culture and all of that, that's a place where people used to bond before the phones and even social media came. Now everyone's glued to the screens, right? People don't interact as much, but barbershops used to be that one stop of local information. That's how we've learned along the way as well.
Yeah, while preparing for this interview, Thomas, I was just researching about this concept of salons and barbers, and I heard that the word salon came from this French word that meant a community. And
Right.
I was trying to understand even the symbol that's on your shirt. I was curious about where that symbol came from. And I don't know if it's true, but apparently there was a time when barbers were also the doctors of the community, and
Exactly.
they
Exactly.
used to do surgeries and other things apart from cutting your hair. And I
Exactly.
think
Exactly.
the the colors of that round thing that you see outside a barber was actually the ribbon or the blood that was represented in those times. So I was just so fascinated by that. But that idea
Spot on.
of being a community space is just such an important memory. But
Right.
once you moved from Bahrain, like most people decide to go to university, maybe in India, especially for the
Mhm.
South Asians growing up there. So,
Right.
what university did you go to, and what were the subjects that you studied at university in that period?
Absolutely. So see again at like every other young ambitious child, I kept dabbling across different ideas. What do I want to do? What do I want to kind of pursue as a career option and all of that. So when it came to the point of should I pursue architecture after the 2 years of engineering graphics, I'm like doesn't interest me anymore. So I was like, what else can I try? And that's when I think I was a bit fascinated by what do you say, the Transformers movies, I think, robotics and all of that, right? And I came across a very there was a good colleague or an older friend of mine where I used to go play basketball with, and he pursued a course called mechatronics. And I'm like, oh, what is this fancy subject? Is it mechanical? Is it electronics? Like it's actually an amalgamation of both of these courses combined, right? So uh, I thought, why not pursue that? And then when I kind of looked at where are these courses available, and this was back in 2012, just very few universities had this opportunity. It wasn't widespread as it is now, but maybe I think Manipal and SRM Chennai and Kongu were the options. So based on how we want to pursue this, I think SRM was our first choice, and we thought why not apply it. We had a couple of people who had gone to SRM, and there was good feedback about it. So I thought, why not give it a shot? And that's where, I thought SRM University was an option. And I think a lot of people that we knew ended up there. A lot of my colleagues also ended up there. So, sorry, my good friends from ISB as well were there. So that was comforting to see them there too.
Like in an engineering course, right, Thomas? Like, how is it normally structured for someone that, because I feel like it gives you a good foundation, the logical thinking side of it. So if you had to
Right.
quickly break it down, the 4 year course, how is that structured?
Right, right. So see, okay, to be super frank, again, how I kind of frame it is right. The first year of college is general for anyone. There's usually 4 years of college, and the first year of college is generally the same subjects that everyone has to go through. So the first and second sem is basic subjects. That's how it is. Second and third year is when they start specializing in very specific topics around your course. Now, whether you're in biotech or whether you're in nanotechnology or whether whatever it is, right? They start specializing in it, right? But for me, to be very honest, right? college, more than the education aspect, it was about learning about life, because I was exposed to a whole new opportunity. I was away from my parents. I was exposed to a whole new community. I had the freedom to do whatever I want, right? So college became an open door to for me to kind of figure out who I am more than what the subject was, right? And that's when I started getting that affinity towards, hey, I want to kind of build something on my own, right? Now, whether it is the small things. Again, I was quite active in college fests and college activities as well. I kind of, I think, replicated the germ or the seed that I sowed in school to college as well, right? I was very excited to be part of communities and cultural activities. So when I started doing that, I knew that I was passionate towards building things, towards starting things, towards initiating things. And the subjects, obviously, whoever wants to pursue engineering, it is definitely something that you can consider, something that you want to pursue. But again, to be very frank, engineering, doctor, lawyership, all of these are courses people do for just considering as a degree. But people end up, I think 70% of the friend circle that I have who were engineers are not engineers anymore. They're probably pursuing business, they're probably pursuing a family business or something or the other. Probably they've shifted from something else, right? And it's okay. Obviously your logical thinking and the perspective, it's a perspective of how this education kind of frames you, right? So yeah, I think that's what engineering kind of taught me. And again, I did learn a couple of new things, but again, I don't call myself an engineer. As much as I've learned the subject, I don't think I'm qualified enough to be an engineer, a proper engineer, to be honest.
Well, that's fascinating, Thomas, because you often think about how we reflect on our experiences and how they helped us, and everyone takes something different from a particular experience, right? For
True.
you, I think it was that space to explore, it was that space to understand yourself. With regards to, I know right out of after SRM, you started Entratronics. Am I saying that right, Thomas?
Entra mechatronics.
Entra mechatronics. So
Yeah.
I was just curious, because I know in some way it's related to the subject that you were interested in and studying at university. Was there a group that you formed where you were experimenting with ideas and building things that led to that? So I'm curious about that.
Of course, of course. So, it came to the final year of our college, right? And obviously, all of us have to execute a final year project. That's how it works, right? So I was like, hey, why do we have to do the same thing again and again? Like everyone is just showing engines or mechanical things. It's the same project that you just replicate and show to the staff and all of that, right? So I'm like, let's do something different. And the A plus grade person that we always go to, he's like, I'm not making you part of my team because I know that you're going to make me do all the work, and you guys just sit back and relax. So I'm like, hey, okay, fine, fair point, because probably we would have probably taken advantage of it. Okay, we have to kind of figure it out on our own. And that's when I came across two wonderful friends of mine as well who was looking for partners to kind of form a group. And we started dabbling about the idea, and we kind of came across this concept of creating an automatic hair cutting machine, right? So we're like, then we kind of started to deep dive into the industry, and we saw that employment was one of the biggest problems in the industry because a stylist that, let's say, you pay them a certain salary, right? Even for 500 rupees, they end up going to the next salon, right? The attrition rate is very high. That is, the number of people who keep shifting every 3 months is very high. There's no loyalty in terms of stylists remaining to a salon, right? So we're like, all right, if employment is one of the biggest issues, and that's how we came across a lot of facts, like as you said, that barbershops used to be, doctors and surgeons who used to help these commuters and all. So when we, kind of deep dived into it, we thought, why not make it a project? Like, why not create something different? So we did kind of spend around 4 to 5 months developing an automatic haircutting machine, and we did kind of create a prototype. It is quite fascinating. It was there was vacuum suction, and actually there are real products who have the same concept now out in the market. Like it's not fully commercialized, but it's alive in the market. There are quite a few developers and innovators who developed it, and we are like, wow, that's amazing to see that people are bringing this reality into fruition as well. So I think, we thought, why not make it as a project? And we spent 4 to 5 months. We developed an automatic hair cutting machine. It used to suck the hair through vacuum, and it used to cut the hair. And I tried it on myself as well. But again, the first question everyone asks is, won't it cut your head? Won't it cut your ears? Right? That fear is there. We presented it to the panel, and they're like, hey, you just copied it, and we got a B or B plus, I think, as hilarious as it sounds. But we were like, hey, why not maybe create a company out of it? That's when we thought, why not give it a shot. So, and we're just right out of college. What is there to lose? Maybe a year or two is what we would lose. So I thought, yeah, I think the three of us formed a company. We thought we came across a mentor who was in the space. He had connections with the salon industry, and he was a consultant helping us out. So then we kind of got an investment from a Singapore investor who helped us. So then as we kind of pursued into this venture, we realized that, hey, hardware is quite a long game. And I think one thing that we learned is, hardware, you require crores and crores of funds. Even, again, this was back in 2016, right out of college, right? Now India is more acceptive of hardware products and hardware projects and all that. Back then, even, I think one very funny stat that I still kind of reflect upon is, I think back in 2016, there were just 900 recognized startups in India. Now there's more than 1.5 lakh startups recognized under Startup India, right? That's how much it's progressed and advanced. So uh, we then, I spent 2 3 years on that project. It was quite struggling because hardware, it wasn't working out. Then we made a small pivot into another product with the remaining funds that we had. We thought we could do it, but hardware is a very long game. But in that journey, what I learned was more than creating things as engineers, or as a team, what we would want to do is we always think product first, that what we're creating is very fancy. People will just buy it the minute we make it, right? That's not at all how it is. There's a very interesting book called Monetizing Innovation, if I'm not wrong, and I think I read that when I was at my incubation period in IIM Bangalore. Uh, and that actually tells you about how you have to look at it from the consumer end. That is, understand a term called WTP, which is willingness to pay. Are customers willing to pay what you're going to make, right? So don't invest, crores and crores to just develop something, and at the end, no one in the market wants it, right? First, understand, create small iterations or MVPs, that is minimal viable products, and test it in the market. See if anyone in your close circle actually is willing to pay for it, right? The WTP I was talking about. Are they asking, is there word of mouth? Are people referring your product, right? That's when you know you're onto something. But my second project in that Entra Mechatronics venture was we created an automatic an automatic rice cooker, right? As fancy as it sounds, right? We thought, hey, we're creating a revolutionary gadget, like it's helping people cook rice without even being there and all of that, right? But at the end of the day, the pricing, the price point, there's so many parameters before you commercialize anything, right? And we realized that our ideas may be fancy, but at the end of the day, if you don't get a rupee in your account, or a dinar or a dollar in your account, you don't have a business. And I think that's one thing I've learned from a lot of mentors, right? You're not a business unless you have revenue or sales coming into your account. You're just an idea or a project, right? So yeah, that was my learning in my first venture.
I mean, that's a lot to unpack there, Thomas. For like someone starting off, I think it's quite humbling to see how openly you accepted, the fact that some things will work and some things will not work. And I think a lot of people are uncomfortable with this idea of failing as you get to a point where you want to succeed. Maybe your first idea won't be successful, maybe the second one won't, but you'll eventually find a niche that you can really satisfy and
True,
contribute to. When I was looking through your profile, I noticed you said that this was like your personal MBA in a lot of ways, and
true,
in
right.
a way you were learning in the real world as you went along.
Correct,
But for
correct.
someone that's in college, just getting out of college right now in India, that just wants to start up, like when they say a startup, do they mean a business? Like, what are the first few things you would associate with a business? You need a product and a service. Then what do you need next? You need a place to sell it. So if you had to tell me 4 or 5 things that you need to actually have a business that you learned from that time, what would these 4 or 5 things be?
So see, again, what I would highlight here is idea is 1%. Everyone may think that idea is, everything, but idea is just 1%. 99% is execution, right? And I think one of our mentors back in the day used to tell us that, hey, especially India, is a space where you can actually go out and check anything because everything is available, right? So if you have a product, whatever it may be, whether it's a toothbrush or a D2C product or a fancy gadget, just go out in the market and see if people are willing to pay for it, right? See if people are putting an advanced money for whatever it is, right? Are people ready to pay for it? Are people accepting the project, right? And I think one very, what do you say, novice mindset that many people think is, I have an idea, I should not share it with anyone, right? That is the most naive concept, and I used to do that as well. Like, we had a very great idea, don't share it with them. I would say, shout it out to the world, right? Shout it out to everyone and get feedback. Because no, it's not easy to make a company. It's not easy to make a project. It's not easy to make a product, right? Ask feedback from as many people, right? Learn their perspectives, right? Now, we may have a very specific way of thinking, right? Understand why someone would pay for it or why someone wouldn't pay for it. So my singular thing is execution. Just, you have an idea, right? Go out and talk to people. Go out and maybe try creating a simple prototype, right? A simple minimum thing. Don't put in lakhs or crores or anything. Just thousands of products to prove what you're doing. Like, if it's a D2C product, right? Create a packaged, let's say for an example, create, you want to create a protein bar, right? So create a very simple project sample or something and show it to people and ask them, would you do it? Is the marketing right? Is the branding right? Or even just go out and promote on social media and see how much interest you're getting for it. And then you start to develop the product later on, right? See if people are willing to pay. I think that is one of my biggest learnings. First, execute, talk to the market, and then start developing whatever it is.
Yeah, that's really fascinating, Thomas. And I feel like you've broken it down well. But for you at a personal level, what are some products that you use on a day-to-day basis that you think are really well designed or that you would use again and again or recommend to someone? Like for me, for the longest time, I've been using this shoe called A6, and I think this shoe has just given me the best like quality, and I've used it consistently and constantly recommended it to people. So what is
Right,
one
right.
product that you use that you would recommend hands down?
Wow. That's a great question. I think rather than a product, what I would actually highly recommend is an app called Fitter. It's a community of fitness enthusiasts, and I think during the COVID time, I was at home. I was in my hometown. I was having a lot of food, and I kind of put on a lot of weight, and I wasn't leading a very healthy lifestyle. So then I think I kind of found a coach on this app, and they kind of teach you the concepts of health, right? From how do you calculate calories, how do you maintain calories, and all, right? So I would highly recommend a community called Fitter if you really want to look into a healthy lifestyle. That's something that I really uh, enjoy, and I saw good transformation through that app. That is something I'd recommend.
That's perfect, Thomas. Like, and you spoke about the pandemic. I'm interested in this phase in your life because I know after you worked with Entra Mechatronics for about
Right.
4 years, you worked at two companies, Freshworks
Right,
and
right,
Ozonetter. So I'm curious about a lot of people move from a job to entrepreneurship, but you moved
right,
from entrepreneurship to two jobs over this 4 year period, and it was also the
right,
pandemic. So
right,
what were, and I know your role over there was regarding partnerships and strategy, but you were
right.
also involved in the startup space at the same time in an indirect way. So
True.
what were some of the things you did there and learned in that period of your life?
Right. So see, what happens is when you just start right out of college, right? You're bubbling with energy, you're bubbling with confidence, you're bubbling with, I can achieve anything that I want, right? But step by step, when you see the reality, right, your confidence is broken down. Everything is broken one by one, right? And I think one thing I would tell to anyone who wants to pursue entrepreneurship is embrace discomfort. Like, you're going to face failures every day. Like, it's not like I found a solution, I'm going to be a $1 million company, right? It's about, you're going to have ups and downs along the way. So for me, I think I reached a phase when I was pursuing my the first venture, right? I had a lot of failures, right? And just very little successes that I saw. And I was starting to compare myself with all my peers, like, hey, they've gone to the US, they've achieved so much, they have a package of so much. And I was thinking about a future which wasn't even happening in the present, right? And I started doubting myself. I had a lot of issues kind of questioning my am I and it's quite common with entrepreneurs too. It's called the imposter syndrome. It's like, are you actually trying to be something that you're not, right? When I truly believed in myself that I can achieve it, I was very doubtful. And I think it reached a point where I kind of broke down, and I'm like, hey, I don't think I can pursue it. And I started questioning, can I go back to a job? Again, obviously, societal pressure starts coming into the play and all of that, right? Like, you're not doing anything for 4 years, you're not earning that, this. So then the whole question, it starts bogging your mind. And I'm like, okay, can I actually land a job? Can I actually get a job? Like, that's something I want to prove myself. Like, okay, this I know I can do, but can I get a job? Can I, start to kind of see how to work in a corporate life? So I voluntarily made a decision because one thing is I was married to the idea of that this one, as commitment and as passionate as you are to the idea, you have to know also when to pull back. I know it's going to be your baby. I know it's something that you love and cherish, but look at it on a realistic view. Are you going to be, if it's not bringing you fruits in a certain timeline, pull back, right? You have to sustain yourself. Again, if you look at Maslow's law of hierarchy as well, right? Your basic needs have to be met. That is shelter, all of that, right? And if those basic needs aren't met, then you're going to be questioning your whole identity, individuality, as a matter of fact, right? So my basic needs itself was becoming a question because I wasn't earning as much as I wanted to. I was not able to settle rent. So there were a lot of questions that I couldn't answer myself. I'm like, okay, I know I can get a job. So how do I get a job? And surprisingly or fortunately, I came across, I think, a very good friend of mine from ISB as well. He recommended an opportunity in Freshworks. He was part of Freshworks, Gaurav Pandey. So he's like, hey, I can probably get you in. There's a new engine called Freshworks for startups, and they're looking for founders who have gone through the journey. And I gave an interview. I think it went quite well, and they had me onboarded within a month or two, and that was a very exciting journey. As in, it was a new perspective. And I really enjoyed that phase of my life because I learned. And again, because I was in a startup, it was all an individual in terms of 2 3 people max, right? But when you work in a corporate, you learn a lot more things on how do you actually run a company, how do you actually follow processes, how do you set up processes, how do you work with the team, how do you set targets, how do you set timelines. But the beauty of where I worked, at least in Freshworks, was this engine was a baby. It was just starting, right? And we had the freedom to do everything. So again, one thing I think I've realized along my journey is also I love 0 to 1. That is, if there's nothing, how do I make it into one is something I love. And we were a very lean team of maybe 4 5 people. And I was reporting to a spectacular manager. His name is Nivas. I look up to him, and I really learned a lot from him. Obviously his director, Rajiv. I think it was, we learned so much. And in 14 months, despite being the pandemic, I don't know how, but we were able to scale that engine from 0 to 1 million in ARR. I have no idea how, but I think the team's efforts, everyone was just at it. And again, it was obviously toiling because we were at home all the time. And it was a global program. So I think I was at it from 9 in the morning all the way till 1 a.m. because we were covering all geographies. I remember even going for lunch because I have meetings back to back. I remember my mom was there and she's like, it's time for lunch. I'm like, give me 2 minutes. And I had just 2 minutes to have my lunch. I quickly grabbed my lunch and came back, and it was just back to back meeting. But it was fun. I felt I was part of something bigger, and I think what we achieved in those 2 3 years was in that one year. I was there for 18 months, if I'm not wrong. But that was a spectacular journey.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about, being innovative within a company structure is also so important. And a lot of people can become entrepreneurs inside an organization. You don't
True.
always have to maybe start something off to be entrepreneurial. And I think you demonstrated that in a lot of ways in that time of your life. I know you've been
Right.
mentioning a lot of books and thinkers, Thomas. At this time, were there any books or any entrepreneurs that you looked up to or were learning a lot from, or maybe even a podcast that you were listening to that sort of got you thinking about this world of business in general, not even entrepreneurship?
So I think, there's obviously a lot of people who I kind of respect and look up to from global angle. I think Richard Branson is someone that I really respect, and I love his quirkiness and the way he kind of gets things done. And he has hundreds of businesses that he runs, and I have no idea how he's done it. But and he's got a book called Losing My Virginity, right? It's a great autobiography, and I enjoyed reading it. That is splendid. Then there's another one about Usain Bolt, how he's kind of you know there's a very common saying, right? He's had to work for 8 to 12 years just for that 9 seconds of fame, right? So I also look up to a lot of these sports athletes as well because the grit and the determination to achieve something that they don't know, there's no assurity. It's the same story for an entrepreneur, right? In India, obviously, there's Girish Mathrun, the Freshworks CEO. I really look up to him, and I've there's something called all hands in all corporates where the CEO gives a quarterly speech or something. And the first all hands I heard that was like by Girish Mathrun. I was floored. I was like, wow. And he was talking about kings and all these very fancy analogies, and I was like, how is that even related to corporate? But at the end of the day, the message, the way storytelling influences a corporate, that is the culture of a company. And he's done it for 10 years, 10 plus years, and it's brilliant how he does storytelling. I learned a lot from him on storytelling. The Kamath brothers, Nikhil and Nitin, I love their podcast. I think you follow them as well. a lot of learnings. That's an MBA in itself, if you think about it. So yeah, and in terms of books, there's a book called Cold Start Problem by Andrew Chen. It talks about how Airbnb started, the network effect. So quite a few interesting books, but mostly around self-help, sports athletes, and stuff like that.
Yeah, it seems like this idea of constantly being open to learning and grasping new ideas, but also doing that in a very efficient, quick manner is a defining characteristic of any, entrepreneur in a lot of ways. But I think you mentioned one thing about athletes, Thomas, and I know in your introduction you also said fitness is such an important part of your life. And I think fitness can transform your thinking in a lot of ways because a good mind
Absolutely.
rests in a good body. So, what role does fitness play in your life, and how did you see that change other things in your life for you?
Wonderful, wonderful. So I think, see, fitness is an absolute necessity. Whoever is listening or whoever it is, right? Fitness should be a day-to-day part of your life. Like it is, active movement is necessary. You need basic function, muscle functionality for, for a good, what do you say, mental well-being as well as physical well-being, right? So for me, I think I started my journey maybe when I was right out of college. I did do it for maybe a year or two, but it was only about pumping extra weights and bulking and all of that. But fitness is not just about that. It's just any sort of physical activity, whether it's jogging, walking, hitting the gym, playing some sport. Do something every day for 15, 20 minutes, or even if it's just in a week 3, 4 times. Just keep yourself active, get your heart running up. And more than exercising, obviously exercising is a crucial part, but more than that, I think what every fitness person would say, 20% is into exercising, 80% is your diet, right? The minute you understand the science of calories, it can do wonders, right? Whoever knows me or whoever's in my close circle, I keep saying no calories, I won't have that, I won't have that, right? Calories can actually show it actually explains everything. You have a maintenance calorie, right? The minute you have more than that, you start to put on weight. The minute you have less than that, you start to lose weight. Then how do you put muscle? You have to have protein, right? It's very basic science if you think about it. I don't even know I just know the ABCs. I don't know so much. There's so much of science to it. But I learned the very basics from a few coaches of mine on the Fitter app, and I think I know now how to sustain a basic lifestyle. Now if I want to kind of put on muscle or want to, I just know that I've changed my diet, have more protein intake, work out more, and all of that, right? So uh have that knowledge. I think that will help you lead a very healthy life, and it definitely reflects in your mental health as well, because the more you exercise, the more you kind of you get to have a very good, well rested sleep, and that helps you with clear thinking, and there's a lot of benefits around it.
That's awesome, Thomas. And I think you spoke about mental health and physical health, and I think this is really important for anyone, not even an entrepreneur, for a regular person, in their 20s and 30s, to give as much importance to those aspects in addition to their professional life. But now we've understood so much about your background, and as I spent some time teaching in classrooms, and one of the things I learned in teachers college was that very often for most individuals there is this phase of curiosity, and then they move into this phase of competence where they acquire some skills, and then they
Right,
go into creativity, where they
right,
create something. So when I'm looking at your journey, I noticed there was this extended phase of curiosity. You were acquiring skills where, whether it was at college, your first startup, the two jobs that you completed, and now I think you are at this phase where you are really brimming with this need to create and build something based on all these experiences. So
right,
before
right.
we jump into Fleck, and the way the company was formed, I remember reading through the website, and you mentioned some really fascinating statistics about the salon tech industry in India or maybe globally. So can you share some like statistics about salons and technology like globally for our listeners, listening to us?
Absolutely, absolutely. So see, if you think about it, right, the salon space is absolutely untouched. It's an undisrupted market. It's a highly disorganized market. It's a blue ocean, as investors or founders would say. Everyone's chasing industries like fintech, edutech. Now there's Zepto, e-commerce, all of that. It's good. It's good to have such vertical innovation. There's a lot of things and a lot of companies there competing, right? But I'm saying there is so much you can do in the salon space, right? If you think of innovation in the salon space, there's just two extremes that I've seen in my expertise. or in my experience. One is a CRM, and the famous ones are Zenoti, Glam Plus, or the flip side of it is furniture or salon equipment. That is a trimmer or this one, right? But there's nothing else. Like there's so much you can do, and that is a place where people go to on a daily basis. Is an evergreen industry, and no one's doing anything about it. And that's why I've been really disturbed for and that's why I kind of jumped into this industry because I see huge opportunity where I want more players to come in and kind of make people understand that there's so much more that we can do. And in terms of statistics, India alone, if you think about it, there's 65 lakh salons, and these are registered salons, right? And by salons, I'm talking about salons and barbershops. Obviously, the ones with GST, but I think there are lakhs without GST who have set up shop, all of that, right? But in that 65 as well, how we've kind of segmented the market is into the premium segment and the local barbershops or the general small scale barbershops. The premium segment, that is the Tony and Guys, the Verves, the Geetanjalis, and all of them. I see close to around 5 lakh salons in that segment. And the remaining barbershop segment is the bigger market size, which is close to 60 lakh barbershops. And this is just in India. Across the globe, it's close to a $140 billion industry, a huge, opportunity. And I think the major players, as you may know, are L'Oreal, Wella, Schwarzkopf. It's just a handful of them right now in the space, and most of them are D2C, meaning they sell products, consumables. So in terms of tech, I think there's a whole lot of opportunity.
That's awesome, Thomas. Like when you think of a barber shop, like what are some of the main services that a barber shop would offer a consumer? And does that change based on gender as well in terms of the kinds of services and the variety you can produce or provide to a consumer?
Of course, of course. So again, see, the mindset or the psychology of both the segments that I highlighted is completely different. If you look at the premium segment, and that is mostly catered to women, quality matters. That is the quality of the service, and everything from pedicure, manicure, facials, hair spa, all of that is part of the kit, right? That's what people offer in these premium salons. And there's a lot of men also growing. Grooming is becoming a very common thing in tier one cities as well. And you call them as the metro men, where they also start to do manicure, pedicures, and all of that, facials, and all of that, right? So that's a growing segment over there. And in the barbershop segment, it's more than quality. It's more about speed and efficiency, and especially pricing. For them, the small scale barbershops about like how fast can I get the haircut done, and how economical or how affordable can I get it done, right? So it's two mindsets if you look at it, and we have two solutions for these two segments as we speak right
Yeah, and that's where I'm curious, how does Fleck come in to actually solve a particular problem? So if you had to first define the problem that you're solving and then
now.
tell me how you are solving it with your solutions, that would be great to understand.
Of course, of course. Okay. So now how I would define or how I would say is, as I told you earlier as well, right? When we surveyed, countless owners, right? We saw four common parameters. All of these owners have issues with employment. They have a problem with procurement. They want more support in marketing their services, and they want to make more revenue, right? So as a company, we're like, hey, we can't solve for everything, right? We have to take step by step. We have to figure it out, and then eventually we can be this one. And at the same time, if you look at the barbershop segment, the problem statement there is there wasn't a singular brand. That is, the premium segment had brands like, as I said, Verve, Stone and Guys, but the barbershop segment had no trusted brand, right? So there are no parameters like an Oyo or a Cult or any other aggregator. There's no singular brand that, hey, I can just go there. I know it's going to be the same price. I know it's going to be the same experience. So these were the two problem statements that we identified. So in the premium segment, what we're doing right now is we're trying to see how we can help owners make more revenue, right? And what we're doing is we're giving them a very simple bundle solution, which has 2 to 3 products. But the main flagship product in that bundle is a skin analyzer or a hair analyzer, right? And right now, stylists are given targets. That is, they have to make 1 lakh sales or 2 lakh sales. And most of them have communication issues, right? Because they're not very well versed in English and all of that, right? Our objective is, hey, you guys are artists, right? You guys are stylists. You're not, you shouldn't be salesmen, right? There should be something else to support you with that, right? So that's why we're like, use this simple tool and just use it as a new SOP or as a new industry standard that, hey, can sir or ma'am, can we do a small consultation on you, right? And this is a simple camera if you come to think about it. You place it on your scalp, it shows you whether you have dandruff. If you place it on your skin, you can see black head, white head. And if you place it on your cuticles, you can see manicure, pedicure. So from head to toe, there are a lot of services and products that we can recommend through this tech solution, right? And with that, I'm seeing owners easily make another 1 lakh rupee, just easily, right? Because on average, if there are 100 customers, and if I'm able to even talk to 10 customers, the minute a customer sees the issue, right now they're not exposed to it. Right now, we feel that, from an outer face, we see that how clean we are and all of that. But the minute you place a camera and it amplifies, the you may, I'm not kidding you, but you will see a lot of bumps, you'll see a lot of black and white head. And when someone is exposed to that, they get really freaked out and they're like, how do I solve for this? Right. And that's when you're actually looking at proper hygiene, right? Looking at your face and your scalp, taking care of it and all of that. So we start recommending services and products based on that. So that's where we kind of have our solution there. And in the barbershop segment, as I was talking, creating that singular brand where people can trust, that, whichever flecked barbershop that I go to, it's going to be the same chair, it's going to be the same style, it's going to be the same bib. So creating that industry standard across barbershops is something we're looking at. So it's two big business models in itself, but we're tackling it one by one.
Yeah, I think that's really a very clear, focused, and specific answer, Thomas. And it got me thinking about my experience at a barbershop. Like, if you had to ask me what barbershop I go to, that's a question I'm very picky about, because when I find a barbershop that gives me the haircut that I really want, I will stay loyal to that barbershop for a very long time.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
my thinking behind a barbershop is every time I change my barbershop, I get very nervous. So in my phone, I'll actually take like 7 photos and I'll show him
Right.
like every single angle of my head and tell him.
True.
So I think I build a lot of trust and loyalty, with my barbershop, and I want that to remain. So I think
Absolutely.
having a barbershop that I can trust and have reasonable expectations from is really, really interesting. And also, one other thing I noticed with my experience was when I go to a barber shop, it's one of the few places where I have like good small talk that I'm not nervous about. Because the barber,
Right.
will ask you how's your day. Normally, nobody will ask you how's your day, during
True.
the
True.
when you're
True.
getting a service, because everyone's in a hurry. And I feel like when I'm waiting for a haircut, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting down. I'm looking around. When I was younger, I remember there were magazines, and I would read magazines, or for kids, sometimes they'd have like a cartoon. So,
Right. Right.
for the customer experience at a barber shop, like how does it start and how does it end? So like once they enter, how long do they spend in a barber shop on an average? And what are some things you think most people want from a barber shop apart from a haircut? Like
Mm-hmm.
would people want to or be open to buying like gel or like a hair care product? So how does that psychology work for a consumer?
Absolutely, absolutely. So see, if it is again, how you have to look at it is obviously premium and the small scale barbershop. But if you want to kind of double click on the small scale barbershop segment, usually on average you can expect a 10, 15, 20 minute wait time. And people again, they just spend time on the phone, they're just looking around. And in terms of commerce, that is exactly a byproduct of our vision, right? It Once you have acquired a salon, then you can start quickly, positioning products or do affiliate marketing where you can start, once you capture data, you're able to kind of push notifications. There's a lot of things that can happen. The potential is immense. But in terms of the customer experience, there are quite a few touch points, right? And again, what we are trying to do is how can we make the experience better, right? In most of these places, a very common feedback that we've got is, these barbers or these stylists, they have the smell of gutka, they have the smell of pan when they kind of do the blade and all of that, right? So can we kind of just, you know, remove that by just giving them sanitizers or introducing SOPs that they kind of maintain a hand hygiene before approaching the customer and all of that, right? So very small touch points is all we're looking to amplify, which we feel will reflect with our experience. And obviously we'll kind of start leaving maybe small board games in these barbershops so that whoever comes and they're waiting for 15 minutes, they start to interact with each other. Like, do you want to play a game of checkers or do you want to play a game of Ludo? And whichever state that we're in, we'll start representing cultural icons now, right? Right now in Bangalore, in these barbershops, right? they really look up to actors like Puneet Rajkumar and all of that, right? So why don't we just have their photos around? So very small, really thought of elements that we start introducing, and then based on feedback, we try to see how we improve their experience so that they can come back again and again.
Yeah, I think that really, like hits the nail over there, Thomas, because like I think going to a barber shop is really an experience, and that
True, true,
sometimes it's something you really look forward to, in the long
right,
run. That distinction you made between premium and the local barber shops, I never thought about that. Very often I would prefer like a local barber shop, but if it was like a family event or a wedding, maybe I would
correct,
invest in like a premium sort of experience.
exactly, exactly,
So that's just interesting to think about, but I've never really thought about um, doing it consciously, and maybe
right,
now when I go to a barber shop I will notice some of these things. So how is Fleck doing right now? What are some of
right,
the
right.
things that like where do you see your growth going ahead and your targets for the next 5 years maybe?
Absolutely, absolutely. So as you see, rightly said, right, for the barbershop segment, how can I bring that premium experience to the small scale barbershop? That's all we're looking at, right? That's what we're trying to do. Like be the trusted brand now, whether a family event or any premium event. Why should I go to that premium barber? I can still end up going to the small scale barbershop, and if it's next door, and get that done, right? Expect the same experience everywhere. So in terms of where we are and what we're looking to do, right now in terms of premium segment, we are close to 80 to 100 salons we're already installed with our tech. And since it's working and we're able to kind of add value to a lot of owners, we have a very aggressive goal to kind of hit 400 salons by the end of the year, by December. We have a strategy and a team all set in place. In terms of the barbershop, again, it was just an idea a few months ago. Now we've actually validated and we've just launched the Barbershop by Flex. It's our first pilot barbershop that we have here in HSR Bangalore. So there's a lot of thesis, there's a lot of experiments that we want to test out. So we're just understanding how the revenue model works. What is the consumer psychology? Are we able to drive traffic? A lot of things that we don't know without actually trying it out, right? So we're spending the next 1 or 2 months just trying out, able to see if we're able to drive traffic and all of that. And if it works, if our hypothesis works, there are a few checkpoints that we're looking at. If it works, then I think we can easily replicate it across states and across India. So that's a huge market we're looking at. And why we're again looking at it as two segments is, as I said, the premium segment is a very limited market size, right? So uh, right now, if in terms of statistics, also, I think L'Oreal themselves, being the giants in India, they've achieved maybe 88,000 salons across India, right? So me being a smaller brand, what I could potentially achieve in the next 3 to 4 years with the current resources that I have is probably 8,000 to 10,000. That's the best probably with the resources I have, right? So that again, it's, as I said, I'm very ambitious, right? That may be a limited number, which may not help us grow into Ola's or the Flipkarts of the world, right? So that's where we're looking at the barbershop segment. As I said, there's 60 lakh barbershops, and if I were to kind of even target 50,000 or 1 lakh of them and create a business model around it, that seems to be more alluring. And the byproduct of that, eventually, once I have customers driving in, then I can go back to something called creating a community, right? Where I start hosting events for these consumers who go to barbershops, like networking events or mixers. So that's there's a long vision that we have along the road, but it's all a try and fail and keep trying till you hit the mark.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of data involved in all of this as well, right, Thomas? Because I
Right.
think very often barbershops or local barbershops are not able to capture customer information. And I feel
True. True. True.
capturing and engaging with the customer beyond their
Right.
salon experience will give them the potential to get consistent revenue from that customer over a period of time, right? And I think
True.
in
True.
in one way, Flect is really solving that problem, right?
True. I think that's the beauty of it. You've hit it, right on the nail. Where there is practically no data available. Like that's where people don't know what's happening in the industry because there is no data. There is no one who's capturing data. There's no one who's accumulating data. There's no one who's doing data analytics around it. So that's what there's so much potential. Once we've done these basic baby steps or foundational steps, the data that we acquire can be used for so much more.
And also about regulation, Thomas. Like, is there like a body in India that regulates salons that, tells them to be a salon, you have to be a member of this union? I mean, like doctors or so is there something like that? Or anyone any day can just say, I've taken a scissors, I have a barber. I can start a salon. Is that how it goes, or like how do you regulate such a unregulated sort of space?
Wonderful, wonderful. So that's actually a great question. So in the premium segment currently, there isn't, as far as I know, at least as far as I'm aware, there isn't any regulated body. As you said, if I want to start a salon, I find a space, I rent it out, I do the interiors, and I start driving marketing. Just it's as simple as that, right? And the funny part about the premium segment is owners don't communicate with each other. They hate communicating with each other. The underlying reason, what I told you earlier was the minute their owner gets exposed to their staff, they'll try stealing them away just for another 500,000 rupees, right? Because stylists start jumping salons just for 500 or 1,000 rupees to the next door salon. So the community or the camaraderie among owners in the premium segment is very limited. There are maybe few people who talk to each other here and there, but there is no association, there is no regulatory body over there. But on the flip side, on the barbershop segment, right, there is a very strong state government. There are local associations like the barber association. So they, whenever issues come, wherever they feel that there's some monopoly happening or cannibalization of a certain area, they all get intervened and they're like, "Yeah, he's stealing my customers," right? So there are a lot of they try to support each other. Again, that's where camaraderie comes. That's where that element of regulation is there in certain places. Kerala has a association, if I'm not wrong. Uh, Karnataka does have a barbershop association, as far as I'm aware. So there are regulated bodies in the barbershop segment, but not in the premium segment of salons.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much to discuss here, Thomas. I think we can go on all night, and I think your team's working on this. So,
Right,
but Thomas, I know it's the last 10 minutes, and I just wanted to jump into this idea of entrepreneurship in India.
of
As a
course.
young entrepreneur yourself, going
Mhm.
through this, right now, what are your thoughts on the ecosystem in terms of support? And maybe you can highlight some experiences you've had as a young entrepreneur, going
Right,
through the system. I know I was recently watching you on the Razorpreneur Challenge, where you were
right,
part
right,
of the Bombay Shaving Company's initiative,
right.
where they worked with different, young salespeople, and you went through that challenge. So,
Right.
what are some things you've noticed about the entrepreneurship ecosystem in India? And what are some things you think we can improve learning from other
Mhm.
markets around the world about this ecosystem?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think, see, if there's one thing I'd like to say to anyone who wants to start a startup, right? India is the best place. Like India is the time because the next 10 years, whichever podcast you listen to, whichever investor you listen to, everyone's going to see that India is the hotspot. Like India is the place to be because you have a huge population. You're talking about, 140 crore people, right? And if you're looking at the tier one cities, if I'm not wrong, that's around there's a percentage of around 10 to 12% in the tier one cities, right? So there's and discretionary, what do you say, disposable income that is really increasing in India, especially, right? So there's so much you can do, and every industry is just growing rapidly. Like I think so. If you want to test anything, India is definitely the place to be, and there are so many support systems coming up. As I said, in 2016, it was just starting off, and when I started off, there wasn't as much support for specific sectors like hardware or deep tech, right? But now there are very specific funds for people who want to kind of create even a spaceship, deep tech, and space related ventures, right? So whatever your idea is, whatever you want to try out, India is the place to be, right? And I think there's a lot of support. It's just that you have to seek out, you have to get out on the field, you have to go meet people, network, and again, knock on doors, right? One thing I always tell whoever I talk to is be shameless, right? Whoever it is, even if you see Ambani across the road, right? Take that 1 second and just ask for advice, like ask for something. Like probably they're gonna shoot you down and be like, hey, go away from me, right? But imagine you got that 1 second or that 10 second, and let's say that one decision can or one support can actually change your perspective or change your trajectory, right? So be open to everyone's gonna say no, everyone's gonna this one, but if you're confident about yourself, if you have a vision, then keep pursuing, right? Again, right now, like we haven't. It's been 8 years I've been on this journey, right? On and off, obviously, but I still haven't reached anywhere substantially or tangibly to be kind of termed as successful or anything, right? There's a long way. There's so much to achieve, but I'm confident in myself. I know that I have the potential. And I know that even if things fail, I can obviously go back to a job and then hop back right in, right? So it's about having that risk mindset, having that right attitude. You have to be ready for failures. It's something that you have to be ready for. And I think India is the place to be. There's going to be people who are willing to, there's so many people willing to help, right? And I think one thing that could improve, obviously, is I think this is not for founders, but for the flip side of investors, right? Investors are still they are still, obviously there are funds to kind of help early stage startups and all of that, right? But again, they don't do it based on risk. They do it based on traction. They do it based on what do you say? How much revenue are you making right now? Or does he come from a pedigree of IAMs or an IIT and all of that? Or does he have 10 years experience leading a company, right? Obviously, they have their their hindrances on why they wouldn't invest a certain amount, right? But on the flip side, if you look at that in the Western world or in the Silicon Valley, right? The minute you're there and you just bounce an idea, people are willing to write 100,000 check or 200,000. That's how open they are to, experiment with their funds. Again, it is a mindset, and we are obviously growing, but there are a lot of ideation stage funds growing, and I think this is just the best time to be in India and experiment what you
Yeah, and I know, Thomas, you were part of an incubator in Bangalore, right?
have.
So
Right.
for a young entrepreneur that's just started off, like what is the experience like in an incubator? Like what are some of the supports you get when you join an incubator, and why should someone consider something like that if they have a small startup that they're building?
Got it. Got it. So, see, in terms of an incubator, accelerator, any of these programs, right? What it helps you think is basics of entrepreneurship, the 101s of entrepreneurship. Like, how do you think of managing a team, or how do you look at a financial statement, or how do you do sales, or how do you find PMF, that is product market fit, or how do you size the market, right? All these basics are actually taught in incubators and accelerators, and obviously their network, and you get exposed to obviously different sort of businesses and industries. So that different perspectives, it tells you, gives you ideas on how you could probably implement that same strategy in your business, right? So exposure network is definitely there. You have to focus on your business obviously, but being getting access to such incubators and accelerators definitely helps you go along.
Yeah, and this idea of education and entrepreneurship, Thomas. Like if you knew that entrepreneurship was the path you wanted to take, and you had to start your time in college again, like how would you design the education of an entrepreneur if you had to create something from scratch for someone that knows 100% they want to be an entrepreneur? Like what would you do for yourself if you had a chance to do that again?
That's a beautiful question. If I had the chance to start over all again, I think what I would obviously do is I would start being in circles who are more builders and who are entrepreneurs, right? Right. Being in a circle, again, I think, as the famous saying goes, right, you're an average of the five people that you spend time with. So the more you're around with the type of people that you want to be, and I think there's a very something that I've also learned is, right, rather than chasing people who are like 10 steps ahead of you or who've raised 10 million, they are not as approachable as possible. Try to find someone who's one step ahead of you or two steps ahead of you, who's probably raised maybe 50 lakhs or 1 crore, right? And get mentorship from them. Ask them, can you be my mentor? Ask them, and approach 10 to 15 people or 20 people who you think fit the bill, and ask them, can you help? And different people, different subjects. So seek out people who you want to be like, and you'll eventually find your path. That's what I would say. That's what I would tell my earlier self as well. Find people who are where you want to be, and then just try to get a glimpse of their wisdom.
Yeah, because you can't really structure something like that, right? And I think the problems that one entrepreneur is really passionate about will be very different from the one that another one is really passionate about or really is
Correct.
invested in, right?
True,
And I
true, true.
remember watching the Nikhil Kamath podcast, on entrepreneurs. I think it was a 4 hour podcast with Ghazal, Alag, and a lot of other prominent, Ritesh Agarwal from
Right.
Oyo Rooms. And I think I heard the entire podcast because I'm just fascinated by this world. He said that risk taking is one of the like defining characteristic of an entrepreneur. Their risk taking potential is a little more. So just like risk
Absolutely.
taking, Thomas, what are two or three other characteristics that you think entrepreneurs normally have? And if you could give me an example of an entrepreneur from India that you think is demonstrating that through their work, that would be really nice. So maybe three characteristics and three companies in India where you think that is actually happening.
So see, one very important characteristic that I would say is persistence, right? Again, if you look at 99% of most of these companies, they do not start with what they kind of think about, right? Whether it's the Swiggy's or the Zomatos or the Flipkarts, they didn't actually start with the Flipkarts or everything, right? They actually started with something else, right? So persistence to still, you'll be getting a lot of no's. And I think um, there's a famous thing by Kunal Shah, which says that, uh, Entrepreneurs are people who keep hitting a wall, they fall down, and they continue that. They continue hitting the wall till they can break it, right? So that's how, you know, what do you say, persistent you have to be. And I think the second characteristic is be a dreamer, be ambitious, be a dreamer, right? It's the dreamers who make, as Steve Jobs and all of them say, it's the dreamers who make things happen, right? You probably, again, a very simple thing is we are just mere humans if you think about it, right? And imagine you're looking at another planet on moon, right? How did we even end up there? How do we even have space stations there, right? It's a group of people who work together, who figure out how to kind of get something there. So I think anything is possible. And you obviously need to be persistent. You're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of, this one. Be persistent, be a dreamer, and put your head to it. You're going to get a lot of no's. I think that's how uh, I would think of it.
Perfect. Thanks, Thomas. So my last question, I know,
Right.
thank you again for making time for this, but this I
Of course.
got from another podcast I really like called the Tim Ferriss podcast. And normally he'll
Mhm.
ask his guests at the end is that if you had to have a billboard that where you could put one sentence or a couple of words about something that you truly believe in that you want to share with the world, and this is the last thing you can
Mhm.
share with the world, what is one
Right.
sentence you would put on that billboard that you think you would want to really share with someone that wants to hear something from Thomas?
I think one simple thing I would say is believe in yourself. It's as simple as that. Believe in yourself, and you can make wonders happen. That's all I can say.
Perfect. So, Thomas, on that note, thank you again for giving us your time. For the listeners, I will be linking the Fleck website. I will be linking their Instagram handle. They're doing some amazing work in the salon tech space. Please look them up, follow them. And if you are in the HSR area, I want all the listeners that are in the HSR area to go into the Fleck barbershop and experience their services. I think as Indians, I think we should really be proud of the young entrepreneurs here and really support our entrepreneurs. And really, this is not just their company, but in a lot of ways it's also our company. So I'm really pushing that and encouraging all the listeners to follow and support Flect in any way possible. And Thomas, any last thoughts before we conclude the podcast?
Just thanks a lot for having me. It was really great chatting with you, and splendid to catch up with you after so long. It's wonderful to see how you're doing a tremendous job, and hope to hear more such stories, and hope that you can continue to inspire more and more learners.
Thanks, Thomas. And this is Abhishek Shetty signing off. And we will have more such episodes, but stay tuned for more episodes of the Learning Stories podcast.